You can feel it because it is already happening. The quantum gateway to the fifth dimension is not approaching, not activating soon, not waiting for a collective signal or a cosmic date. It is open now. It has always been open. What has changed is not the gateway, but the level of alignment required to notice it. This is not an event in space or time. It is a shift in perception that becomes available the moment coherence replaces resistance. The reason this feels urgent is not because something will be lost if you miss it, but because something false is dissolving. The idea that ascension requires effort, struggle, discipline, or accumulation is collapsing. The field does not respond to force. It responds to resonance. The gateway does not open through trying. It becomes visible through recognition. When your internal state stabilizes into clarity, the fifth-dimensional layer of reality reveals itself automatically. This is not mystical. This is law. You are not late. You are not early. You are exactly where your current identity places you. Identity is not your name or your history. Identity is the emotional baseline you return to when nothing is happening. That baseline is the instruction the field follows. When it is coherent, calm, and receptive, reality reflects complexity, synchronicity, and ease. When it is tense, fragmented, or controlling, reality reflects delay and density. The gateway responds instantly, but only to what you are being, not to what you are demanding. This is why effort has never worked the way you were told it would. Effort implies lack. Lack collapses perception. The fifth dimension cannot be accessed from the frequency of trying to get somewhere else. It is revealed when the nervous system exits survival and the mind stops negotiating with the future. Alignment is not something you do. It is something that happens when you stop resisting what you already are. You may notice subtle changes. Time feeling less linear. Emotional reactions dissolving faster. A sense that decisions are making themselves. These are not signs of progress. They are signs of coherence. The gateway does not pull you forward. It allows you to see sideways, into parallel layers that were always present but previously filtered out by tension and identity contraction. Nothing external needs to change for this to be real. The world reorganizes itself around the state you stabilize within. This is why recognition is everything. The moment you stop seeking confirmation and allow the knowing to land, the field responds. This is not belief. This is resonance locking into place. If this feels familiar rather than surprising, that is because you are not learning something new. You are remembering something fundamental. The gateway does not activate for the worthy. It becomes obvious to the aligned. An alignment is not earned. It is allowed. If you are aligned with this frequency, subscribe and remain within it. Waiting has never moved you closer to anything real. Time does not unlock higher states of reality. Calendars do not grant access. Cosmic events do not bestow permission. Ascension has been misunderstood as a future arrival when it has always been a present alignment. The moment you stop orienting yourself toward later, you step into what is already available. Alignment is not spiritual effort. It is internal agreement. It is what happens when your emotional state, your self-concept, and your nervous system are no longer pulling in different directions. When these layers synchronize, reality responds instantly. Not symbolically. Functionally. The field does not measure how long you have waited. It mirrors how coherent you are now. Emotion is the first layer of alignment. Not emotion as reaction, but as baseline. The emotional tone you return to when nothing is demanding your attention is the frequency you are broadcasting. Expansion signals congruence. Contraction signals misalignment. Neither is wrong. Both are information. When you stop fighting contraction and allow it to complete, coherence restores itself naturally. This is regulation, not transcendence. Identity is the second layer. Identity is not who you want to become. It is who you assume yourself to be when no one is watching. It is the silent, "This is how life works for me," that shapes perception. When identity stabilizes into trust rather than vigilance, the field reorganizes to match that assumption. You do not convince reality. You reveal your expectation, and reality follows. The nervous system is the third layer, and it is the most overlooked. A dysregulated nervous system cannot perceive higher dimensional information because it is oriented toward threat. Safety expands perception. Calm widens bandwidth. When the body exits survival, awareness becomes spacious. This is why forcing alignment never works. Pressure communicates danger. Danger collapses perception. The fifth dimensional layer cannot be accessed from a state of bracing. This is where the illusion of external permission dissolves. Nothing outside of you needs to approve your readiness. No teacher, system, lineage, or moment in time holds authority over your access. Those narratives were scaffolding, not truth. They existed to guide attention inward, not to delay arrival. Once you see this, waiting becomes unnecessary. Alignment is not something you achieve once and keep forever. It is a dynamic state you return to. It is felt as simplicity, as reduced internal noise, as the absence of urgency. When alignment is present, decisions feel obvious. Timing feels irrelevant. You stop asking when and start noticing how. This reframing changes everything. You are no longer progressing toward a higher state. You are stabilizing within one. The question is no longer, how long will it take, but what am I broadcasting right now? The answer to that question is always honest. And it is always enough. Time was never the gatekeeper. Alignment was. And alignment has always been available the moment you stop outsourcing it. Not everyone feels the shift in the same way, and that is not a problem to be solved. It is a feature of how perception works. Reality does not present itself equally to all observers because perception is filtered through internal state. The difference is not intelligence, worthiness, or spiritual maturity. The difference is expansion versus contraction, openness versus resistance. Expansion is a relaxed state of awareness. It does not mean constant positivity or elevated emotion. It means there is space inside experience. Sensations are allowed. Emotions move without being suppressed or dramatized. The nervous system is not bracing for impact. In expansion, perception widens. Subtle information becomes available. Patterns connect themselves. The shift feels obvious, even quiet. Contraction is the opposite. It is not failure. It is protection. Contraction narrows awareness in order to manage perceived threat. When the system is contracted, perception collapses into immediacy and control. The mind becomes focused on outcomes. The body tightens. Attention locks onto what feels unresolved. In this state, higher dimensional information is filtered out, not because it is absent, but because it is irrelevant to survival. This is why some people sense profound changes while others feel nothing at all. The field is not selective. It is responsive. It mirrors the level of openness available in the moment. Resistance does not block reality. It filters it. When resistance is high, only dense, linear experiences register. When resistance softens, layers that were always present become perceptible. Sensitivity is not something you earn. It is something you allow. Many people were conditioned to equate sensitivity with danger, weakness, or overwhelm. As a result, they learned to contract habitually. Others were allowed to remain open, either through environment or inner inclination. Neither path is superior. Both are adaptive. And both can shift. There is no hierarchy here. Feeling the shift earlier does not make someone ahead. Feeling it later does not make someone behind. Time is not the metric. Coherence is. A person deeply contracted may suddenly release and experience more clarity in a moment than someone who has been mildly open for years. This is not linear progression. It is state change. It is also important to understand that not feeling the shift does not mean nothing is happening. Alignment often restructures beneath conscious awareness first. The nervous system recalibrates. Emotional patterns soften. Identity loosens. Only after stability returns does perception expand. Expecting fireworks delays this process. Quiet integration is more common than dramatic awakening. The mistake is assuming perception should look the same for everyone. The field meets each system where it is. It does not demand readiness. It responds to it. This removes blame entirely. There is nothing wrong with contraction. There is nothing special about expansion. They are movements within the same intelligence. When openness increases, perception follows. When resistance relaxes, sensitivity returns. No forcing is required. No comparison is useful. The shift is not something you catch up to. It is something that becomes obvious the moment your system is ready to register it. Reality is not hiding from anyone. It is simply reflecting what each system can currently receive. Before defining anything, it is important to clear a misunderstanding that has shaped most spiritual language. The fifth dimension is not a destination you travel to, nor a realm you escape into. It is not above you, ahead of you, or reserved for a future version of yourself. It is a layer of perception that becomes available when separation loosens and awareness widens. What follows is not about going somewhere else, but about seeing more of what is already here. The fifth dimension is best understood as bandwidth. Just as a wider spectrum of light reveals more color, a wider spectrum of awareness reveals more reality. In a contracted state, perception is narrow, linear, and object-focused. Experience is filtered through subject versus object, self versus world, cause versus effect. In this mode, time feels heavy, effort feels necessary, and outcomes feel distant. As perception expands, the filter softens. You begin to notice simultaneity rather than sequence. Meaning appears without analysis. Cause and effect feel immediate, not delayed. This is not imagination. It is the nervous system and mind operating without defensive compression. The fifth dimensional layer is not added on top of reality. It is revealed when resistance drops. Separation is the key distortion that collapses perception. When identity is organized around a small self navigating an external world, awareness fragments. Attention becomes transactional. Reality appears slow and unresponsive. When that identity relaxes, awareness becomes field-like. You sense that experience is happening within you, not to you. This shift alone changes how reality responds. Immediacy is one of the clearest markers of fifth-dimensional perception. You notice that inner shifts and external changes are no longer separated by long delays. Not because you are controlling reality, but because you are no longer contradicting it internally. Coherence replaces friction. The field reflects without distortion. Nothing mystical is required for this. No belief system. No visualization. Only the release of unnecessary tension. The fifth dimension does not reward effort. It responds to clarity. The more present and coherent you are, the more obvious it becomes. If this explanation is landing with clarity rather than confusion, like the video now as a confirmation that this recognition has landed. This understanding reframes everything. You are not ascending away from your life. You are perceiving it more completely. The fifth dimension is not somewhere else. It is what reality looks like when you stop dividing it. Emotion is not a problem to overcome on the path of alignment. It is the path. Emotion is the most immediate feedback system available to consciousness, and it operates in real time. Before thought, before interpretation, before meaning, emotion signals whether you are in coherence with yourself or resisting what is present. Expansion and contraction are the two primary signals. Expansion feels like openness, ease, curiosity, or quiet clarity. It does not require excitement. It simply feels spacious. Contraction feels like tightness, urgency, defensiveness, or collapse. Again, it does not need drama. It is a bodily signal that something is being resisted or misinterpreted. Neither signal is good or bad. Expansion does not mean you are doing something right. Contraction does not mean you are failing. They are directional indicators. Expansion points toward alignment. Contraction points toward friction. The mistake has been trying to eliminate contraction instead of listening to it. Emotion becomes distorted only when it is judged or suppressed. When contraction appears and the mind immediately tries to fix it, override it, or bypass it, the signal is lost. The nervous system remains activated. Perception stays narrow. When contraction is allowed to be felt without narrative, it resolves on its own. Alignment restores itself naturally. This is why emotional honesty is calibration. Not confession. Not analysis. Simply acknowledging what is present without attempting to improve it. The field responds to honesty faster than it responds to intention. When emotion is met directly, coherence returns. When emotion is avoided, resistance multiplies. Expansion does not need to be chased. It arrives as a byproduct of allowing. When you stop demanding a different internal state, the system relaxes. That relaxation is alignment. And alignment is what the field mirrors. Emotion is not pulling you off course. It is keeping you on it. The moment you stop arguing with the signal, it has done its job. Guidance does not need to be dramatic to be accurate. It only needs to be felt. This is how navigation works in real time. Not through effort, but through sensitivity. Not by control, but by attention. Emotion is the interface. When you listen, reality responds without delay. Forcing feels productive, but it is one of the most efficient ways to densify perception. Control, urgency, and excessive effort are not neutral behaviors. They are signals. Each one communicates to the field that something is wrong now and must be corrected before safety is possible. That signal collapses awareness back into the third-dimensional layer of reality, where separation, delay, and struggle appear normal. Forcing is rooted in mistrust. It assumes that without intervention, reality will fail you. This assumption tightens the nervous system and narrows attention. When attention narrows, perception follows. You become focused on outcomes, timelines, and manipulation. The field responds by mirroring friction. Not as punishment, but as coherence. Reality reflects the state you are holding. Urgency is a particularly dense frequency. It compresses time into pressure. It convinces the system that something must happen immediately or else. That, or else, is always vague, but the body feels it clearly. In urgency, awareness loses depth. Decisions become reactive. The mind loops. This state cannot perceive higher dimensional information because it is optimized for survival, not insight. Effort is often misunderstood here. There is a difference between movement and forcing. Movement arises from clarity. Forcing arises from lack. When action is aligned, it feels clean and obvious. When action is forced, it feels heavy and compulsory. The body knows the difference instantly. One expands perception. The other collapses it. The third dimension is not defined by physicality. It is defined by resistance. It is the layer of reality experienced when identity is organized around control and separation. In this layer, cause and effect feel delayed because internal contradiction slows coherence. You want one thing, fear another, and brace against uncertainty. The field mirrors that fragmentation. Allowing is the opposite signal. It does not mean passivity or resignation. It means the absence of internal argument. When you allow what is present without needing it to be different first, the nervous system relaxes. That relaxation widens perception. You begin to notice options, timing, and responses that were invisible under pressure. Relaxation is not laziness. It is intelligence. A relaxed system processes more information with less distortion. It responds instead of reacts. In relaxation, identity softens. You stop positioning yourself against reality and start moving with it. This is lift. Not metaphorical lift, but perceptual lift. You see more because you are no longer bracing. The paradox is that allowing often produces faster results than forcing ever did. Not because you are trying to manifest speed, but because coherence removes resistance. When internal signals align, the field reflects without delay. This can feel uncanny at first because it contradicts conditioning. You were taught that effort equals reward. In reality, coherence equals response. Nothing needs to be controlled for alignment to occur. Control was a survival strategy, not a creation strategy. It served a purpose once. It does not serve perception now. When you release the habit of forcing, you do not lose power. You regain access. The fifth dimensional layer does not open to those who try harder. It becomes visible to those who stop trying to override themselves. Relaxation is not the end of movement. It is the beginning of accuracy. Before timelines can be understood, one illusion must be released. You do not move through timelines the way a body moves through space. You are not traveling, jumping, or selecting futures from a menu. Timelines are not places. They are vibrational arrangements that become perceptible when your internal state matches them. What you experience as a timeline shift is a change in coherence, not a relocation. A timeline is a pattern of probabilities organized around identity. It is the way reality behaves when filtered through a specific emotional baseline, self-concept, and level of nervous system regulation. When those internal variables shift, the pattern of events, opportunities, and responses reorganizes automatically. Nothing external needs to be pushed. The match does the work. This is why choice has been misunderstood. You are not choosing timelines through intention or visualization. You are tuning to them through what you consistently embody. The field does not respond to what you want. It responds to what you are stabilized within. Identity is the tuning dial. Emotion is the current. Perception locks onto whatever frequency those generate together. When identity is fragmented, timelines feel chaotic. You experience inconsistency, reversals, and effort without traction. This is not punishment. It is feedback. The signal being sent is mixed, so the reflection appears unstable. When identity coheres, timelines stabilize. Outcomes feel less dramatic, but more reliable. Reality begins to feel responsive rather than random. There is no leap involved in tuning. Shifts often feel subtle because the change happens internally first. You may notice that certain problems no longer appear. Certain conversations stop happening. Certain opportunities arise without pursuit. This is not magic. It is resonance. You are no longer tuned to the same version of reality, so it stops presenting itself. Travel metaphors collapse accuracy here. You are not leaving one world and entering another. You are remaining where you are while perception and response change. This is why the body does not need to feel different for a timeline shift to occur. What changes is the interpretive layer through which experience is organized. Trying to choose a timeline creates contradiction. Desire without coherence signals lack. Lack destabilizes tuning. The more you attempt to force a future, the more you reinforce the identity that does not have it. Allowing, on the other hand, removes contradiction. When you stop trying to arrive somewhere else, the system relaxes. That relaxation allows identity to reorganize naturally. The most powerful timeline shifts occur when you stop tracking them. Not because awareness is wrong, but because fixation introduces control. Control compresses perception. When attention rests in the present state without negotiation, tuning happens quietly. Reality adjusts without announcement. This reframes responsibility without pressure. You are not responsible for managing infinite futures. You are responsible for coherence now. That coherence selects the only timeline you can ever experience, the one that matches who you are being. You do not enter timelines. You reveal them. And what is revealed is always an honest reflection of your current alignment. Identity is not a thought you think or a mood you pass through. It is the baseline you return to when nothing is actively happening. It is the quiet assumption beneath your reactions, the orientation you default to without effort. This baseline is the switch that stabilizes reality. Not intention. Not desire. Identity. Temporary emotions move constantly. They rise and fall in response to stimuli, memories, and sensations. They are weather, not climate. Identity is climate. It is the emotional and perceptual environment that remains consistent beneath changing conditions. Reality does not reorganize around passing weather. It organizes around climate. This is why trying to change reality by managing emotions alone rarely works. You can feel hopeful in the morning and discouraged in the evening without any real shift occurring. The field does not respond to emotional spikes. It responds to what you repeatedly return to. That return point is identity. Identity answers silent questions all day long. Is life safe or threatening? Is support available or scarce? Do things work out or require struggle? These assumptions are not spoken, but they are lived. They shape posture, attention, decision-making, and interpretation. The field mirrors them because they are coherent signals. When identity is unstable, timelines feel unstable. You may experience bursts of alignment followed by collapse. Moments of clarity followed by confusion. This is not failure. It is a system without a fixed reference point. Without a stabilized identity, tuning cannot hold. Stabilizing identity does not mean suppressing emotion. It means allowing emotions to pass without redefining yourself around them. Feeling fear does not mean you are unsafe. Feeling doubt does not mean you are misaligned. When identity remains steady while emotion moves, coherence strengthens. Reality begins to respond consistently. This is the difference between saying, "I feel uncertain," and becoming someone who believes life is uncertain. One is a passing state. The other is a structural signal. The field does not punish uncertainty. It reflects identity-level assumptions because those are the most reliable instructions. Identity shifts do not require effort. They require recognition. The moment you see that you have been identifying with a pattern rather than observing it, space opens. That space allows a new baseline to form naturally. You do not force a new identity. You stop clinging to an old one. This is also why affirmations often fail. Repeating statements without identity coherence creates friction. The body knows when a statement contradicts its baseline. That contradiction destabilizes tuning. When identity shifts first, language becomes unnecessary. Reality responds before words are formed. The switch is always on. It is always broadcasting. The question is not whether identity is shaping your experience, but which identity is currently stabilized. Once this is seen clearly, effort becomes irrelevant. You stop trying to change outcomes and start noticing what you are being. Reality follows stability. When identity settles, timelines lock. Not because you chose them, but because there is no longer internal contradiction. The field reflects what is consistent. And identity is the most consistent signal you ever send. Contrast is not a detour on the path of alignment. It is the mechanism that sharpens it. Without contrast, awareness has no edge. There is nothing to differentiate, nothing to refine, nothing to recognize. Expansion becomes vague without something to press against. This is why contrast appears precisely when identity is ready to clarify. Discomfort is often misread as regression. In truth, it is information arriving with precision. When something feels tight, frustrating, or dissonant, it is not blocking alignment. It is revealing where alignment is incomplete. Contrast highlights the exact frequency that no longer fits. It draws attention to the subtle mismatch between who you have been and who you are stabilizing into. Ascension is not smooth because clarity is not smooth. Refinement requires distinction. You cannot know coherence without touching incoherence. You cannot recognize resonance without encountering distortion. Contrast provides this data efficiently. It accelerates awareness by making misalignment impossible to ignore. The mistake is treating discomfort as an enemy. When resistance arises, the instinct is to escape, override, or spiritually bypass the sensation. That reaction delays integration. When discomfort is allowed without narrative, it resolves quickly. The information is received. The signal completes. Alignment adjusts. Contrast does not mean suffering. It means precision. A system refining itself becomes sensitive. Small misalignments feel louder because awareness is sharper. This is not because something is wrong, but because something is working. A dull instrument needs force. A precise one needs only contact. This reframing changes how challenges are experienced. Instead of asking why something is happening, attention shifts to what is being clarified. Instead of pushing through, awareness softens into curiosity. The field responds to this openness by accelerating reorganization. Reality adjusts faster when information is not resisted. Contrast also prevents stagnation. Without it, identity calcifies. Comfort without awareness leads to unconscious repetition. Contrast introduces movement. It keeps alignment dynamic. It ensures that expansion does not become numbness. In this way, contrast is not opposed to peace. It protects it. There is no need to seek contrast. It arrives naturally as coherence increases. The more aligned you become, the more precisely misalignment is revealed. This can feel paradoxical at first. Progress appears to bring challenge. In truth, progress brings clarity. And clarity exposes what was always there but previously unnoticed. Nothing about contrast is personal. It is not a test. It is not a punishment. It is not evidence of failure. It is the field communicating efficiently. When you stop arguing with the signal completes. When it completes, the discomfort dissolves. Ascension accelerates when contrast is met without resistance. Not because pain is required, but because information is honored. Precision emerges. Identity sharpens. Alignment stabilizes. What once felt like an obstacle reveals itself as guidance doing its job. Contrast does not slow the path. It defines it. Surrender has been misunderstood as weakness when it is actually intelligence. It is the capacity to stop fighting reality long enough to receive accurate information. What follows is not an invitation to give up control blindly, but to recognize control for what it is, a survival pattern that no longer matches the level of awareness you are stabilizing into. Control originates in the nervous system, not the mind. It is a learned response to perceived threat. When the system believes safety is conditional, it tightens. Attention narrows. The urge to manage outcomes intensifies. Control feels necessary because it once was. It helped the system navigate uncertainty when trust was not available. That does not make it wrong. It makes it outdated. The third-dimensional layer of reality is organized around this pattern. It is the perceptual environment that arises when identity is structured around separation and defense. In this layer, effort feels required, vigilance feels responsible, and relaxation feels dangerous. Reality appears external and unpredictable because the system is braced against it. Control reinforces separation. It assumes a world that must be managed from the outside. This assumption fragments awareness. You become the controller confronting the controlled. That split collapses coherence. The field mirrors this fragmentation by presenting resistance, delay, and friction. Not to teach a lesson, but to remain accurate. The nervous system does not respond to logic. It responds to safety. When control is relaxed, even slightly, the system receives a new signal. There is space. There is time. There is no immediate threat. This shift allows perception to widen. Awareness becomes less reactive. Identity softens. The third-dimensional filter loosens. Separation is not philosophical here. It is physiological. When the body exits survival, the sense of being cut off from reality dissolves. You stop positioning yourself against experience and start participating within it. This is not passive. It is responsive. Response requires far less energy than control because it is informed by the whole field, not just a narrow slice of it. Letting go of control does not mean abandoning discernment. It means releasing the belief that force produces safety. Safety emerges from coherence, not domination. When identity no longer needs to brace, reality no longer needs to resist. The feedback loop changes instantly. This is why surrender feels relieving before it feels empowering. The system exhales. Tension drains. Awareness expands. Only then does intelligence reassert itself, clearer and more accurate than before. Control was never intelligence. It was compensation. The third dimension persists as long as control is treated as necessary. When control is seen as a habit rather than a requirement, perception shifts. You begin to notice how little effort is actually needed. How much movement happens on its own when interference stops. Surrender is not collapse. It is recalibration. It is the recognition that the survival strategy has completed its task. What replaces it is not chaos, but a deeper order that was inaccessible while the system was bracing. When control relaxes, separation dissolves. When separation dissolves, perception expands. And with that expansion, a different layer of reality becomes available without force, without effort, and without struggle. Allowing has been distorted into inaction because it has been misunderstood through the lens of control. When effort is treated as the only form of movement, anything that does not look like pushing appears passive. In reality, allowing is one of the most active states consciousness can occupy. It is not doing nothing. It is doing nothing unnecessary. Allowing is coherent presence. It is the state in which attention is fully here, unfragmented by resistance or anticipation. In this state, perception is clear. Signals are received accurately. Responses arise without delay. Nothing is forced, but nothing is avoided. This is not withdrawal. It is engagement without interference. Passivity is disengagement. Allowing is responsiveness. The difference is subtle but decisive. In passivity, attention collapses and responsibility is abdicated. In allowing, attention is wide and available. You are not pushing reality, but you are not absent from it either. You are in conversation with what is present. When allowing is misunderstood, the mind fears loss of agency. It imagines chaos, stagnation, or missed opportunities. This fear is inherited from a survival-based identity that equates control with safety. In truth, control reduces available information. Allowing increases it. The system that is not bracing can sense timing, nuance, and direction with far greater accuracy. Coherent presence means the body is regulated, the mind is not negotiating with the future, and emotion is allowed to move without suppression. In this state, action becomes obvious. You do not debate what to do next because the next step presents itself. This is not intuition as mystery. It is intuition as clarity. Allowing also removes the delay created by internal contradiction. When one part of you wants something and another part resists it, movement stalls. Forcing attempts to override that resistance. Allowing resolves it. Once resistance dissolves, movement happens naturally, often faster than before. This is why allowing often feels like acceleration after a period of stillness. The stillness was not inactivity. It was recalibration. It was the system re-establishing coherence so that movement could occur without friction. When that coherence locks in, response is immediate. Responsiveness does not mean reacting to everything. It means responding to what is actually present, not to imagined threats or projected outcomes. In allowing, you are not scanning for problems. You are available for information. That availability is what the field responds to. Nothing is lost through allowing. What is lost is unnecessary struggle. What remains is precision. Action taken from allowing is efficient because it is informed by the whole field, not just a narrow agenda. You do less because less is required. Allowing is not the absence of movement. It is movement without distortion. It is the state in which action and awareness are aligned. When this is understood, the fear of letting go dissolves. You realize you were never meant to carry the weight of control alone. The field does not need you to push it. It needs you to be available to it. Creation has never happened anywhere except now. Every attempt to access reality through the past or future collapses the very gateway you are trying to enter. The present moment is not a poetic concept or a mindfulness technique. It is the only point at which perception, identity, and the field intersect. Outside of now, nothing responds. The past exists only as memory, and memory is interpretation. It is a reconstruction filtered through your current identity. The future exists only as projection, shaped by expectation and fear. Neither has creative power. They borrow their charge from the present moment and then redirect it into illusion. When attention is absorbed by either, awareness fragments and coherence dissolves. Fixation on the past reinforces identity contraction. You repeatedly tell the field who you were, what happened, and what is no longer possible. Fixation on the future does the same thing in a different direction. You tell the field that fulfillment is elsewhere, later, conditional. In both cases, the signal is the same, not now. Reality responds by withholding immediacy. The present moment collapses this delay. When attention returns to what is actually here, without narrative, the system relaxes. The nervous system exits anticipation and regret. Perception widens. This widening is not abstract. It directly increases responsiveness. The field mirrors presence because presence is coherence. This is why access feels immediate when you stop trying to get somewhere. The gateway is not opened through focus. It is revealed through absence of distraction. When attention is no longer split between what was and what might be, energy consolidates. That consolidation is creation. Nothing needs to be added to the present moment to make it powerful. It already contains every variable required for reorganization. Identity, emotion, perception, and environment all converge here. This convergence is why shifts can feel sudden when presence stabilizes. Reality does not need time to catch up. It was already aligned. The mind resists this because it equates presence with loss of control. It believes that without past reference and future planning, chaos will follow. In truth, the opposite occurs. When attention rests fully in now, intelligence becomes precise. Action arises cleanly. Timing becomes obvious. There is less guessing because there is more information. The present moment is also where resistance dissolves. Resistance cannot exist without comparison. Comparison requires time. When attention is here, there is nothing to compare this moment to. It simply is. That neutrality allows alignment to settle without effort. The system stops negotiating with reality and starts cooperating with it. This does not mean abandoning memory or foresight. It means removing identity from them. Memory becomes information, not definition. Foresight becomes orientation, not pressure. Both return to their proper function once presence is restored. Immediacy is not a reward for discipline. It is the natural state of a system no longer divided. When you are here, fully, the field responds fully. When you are not, response fragments. The gateway has always been now. It cannot be found elsewhere because elsewhere does not exist. The more often you return to this recognition, the more stable access becomes. Creation does not wait. It only responds to where you are actually standing. Before anything else can be understood, the perspective itself must elevate. What follows is not an idea to adopt, but a recognition to allow. The shift is simple, but it dissolves nearly every misunderstanding about reality. You are not a separate entity moving through a field. You are the field becoming aware of itself from a localized point of view. The subject-object split is the primary distortion of perception. It creates the sense that there is a you inside a body observing a world outside of you. From this split arises effort, seeking, and control. The moment this division relaxes, perception reorganizes. Experience stops happening to you and begins happening within you. The field is not something you interact with. It is the medium through which all interaction occurs. Thoughts arise in it. Sensations move through it. Environments appear within it. What you call the world is a pattern of experience occurring inside awareness, not outside of it. This is not philosophy. It is direct observation once attention turns inward without analysis. Identity has been built around the assumption of separation. You learn to locate yourself behind the eyes, inside the mind, managing a life. That identity was functional, but it was incomplete. When awareness recognizes itself as the space in which the body, mind, and world appear, identity loosens. You are no longer confined to a point. You are the context. This recognition collapses effort. There is nothing to reach for because nothing is outside. There is nothing to align with because you are the alignment. The field does not respond to you because it is you. Response and source are the same movement viewed from different angles. When this lands, the need to manipulate reality dissolves. You stop trying to influence the field and start noticing how effortlessly it moves when unopposed. Action still happens. Decisions still occur. But they arise from coherence rather than strategy. The sense of being a doer fades. What remains is responsiveness. This does not remove individuality. It reframes it. The body-mind becomes an instrument through which the field experiences itself. Preferences, movement, and expression continue, but without the burden of separation. Life becomes participatory rather than confrontational. Fear often arises at this threshold because the small self believes it is about to disappear. In truth, nothing real is lost. Only the tension of holding an identity that was never accurate dissolves. What remains is clarity, simplicity, and a quiet confidence that does not need reinforcement. When you recognize yourself as the field, seeking ends naturally. Not because answers have been accumulated, but because the question dissolves. There is no longer a gap between awareness and experience. This is not an altered state. It is the underlying condition that was obscured by habit. The field has always been conscious. The only shift is where identity is located. When identity rests as awareness itself, reality no longer feels external or adversarial. It feels intimate, responsive, and immediate. You were never inside the field. You were looking at it from within itself. Recognition is the only force that collapses time. Not effort. Not repetition. Not endurance. Time stretches only when awareness is divided. The moment something is clearly seen for what it is, delay dissolves. Reality reorganizes instantly because there is no longer internal contradiction slowing the signal. Recognition is not intellectual understanding. It is not agreement or belief. It is the moment when something false drops away and what remains no longer needs maintenance. In that moment, identity recalibrates. When identity shifts, timelines do not gradually adjust. They realign immediately because the instruction being broadcast has changed. This is why breakthroughs feel sudden. Not because something new was created, but because something unnecessary was released. The field does not need time to respond to clarity. Time was only compensating for confusion. Once confusion ends, time collapses. Timelines are sensitive to recognition because recognition alters coherence at the deepest level. When you truly see that a pattern is no longer you, the pattern loses power. When you truly see that you are not separate from the field, effort becomes irrelevant. These are not affirmations. They are perceptual shifts. And perception is causal. Most people try to change timelines by adding new behaviors or thoughts. That approach works slowly because it does not address the source. Recognition works instantly because it removes the contradiction at the root. The moment identity stops broadcasting mixed signals, the field mirrors coherence without delay. This is why waiting is unnecessary once recognition lands. There is nothing to integrate over time when clarity is complete. Integration only exists when understanding is partial. Full recognition reorganizes structure on contact. Reality adjusts because it has no reason not to. Recognition cannot be forced. It arrives when resistance exhausts itself. When the mind stops negotiating. When awareness relaxes into honesty. This is why effort never produces the shift, but sincerity does. The system opens when it stops pretending. When recognition happens, you may notice that old struggles simply disappear. Not solved. Not healed. Gone. This can feel disorienting because the identity built around managing them dissolves too. What replaces it is simplicity. Fewer questions. Less urgency. A sense that movement is happening without push. Time collapses because you are no longer projecting fulfillment forward. The future loses its charge. The past loses its authority. Everything relevant consolidates into now. This consolidation is power. Not the power to control, but the power of coherence. Recognition is quiet. It does not announce itself. It feels like relief rather than excitement. Like something heavy being set down. That relief is the signal that a timeline has shifted. The field responds immediately because nothing is blocking response anymore. If this recognition is landing now, comment with the words, "I am ready," to anchor this timeline. Nothing else is required. You do not need to prepare further. You do not need to become someone else. Recognition has already done the work. What remains is to allow reality to catch up to the clarity you are no longer resisting. Time only existed to accommodate confusion. Recognition ends the need for both. Stabilizing the fifth dimensional state is not about maintaining a high vibration or protecting a fragile alignment. What has been recognized does not need to be held in place through effort. Stability emerges naturally when identity stops oscillating. The shift becomes permanent not because you try to keep it, but because there is no reason to leave it. Embodiment is the key here. Not embodiment as technique, but as residence. The body is not something to transcend. It is the stabilizing structure through which coherence expresses itself. When awareness rests comfortably within the body without tension or avoidance, perception stays wide. You do not float away from life. You meet it fully. Coherence does not require vigilance. It requires honesty. When you stop pretending to be more evolved, more certain, or more peaceful than you actually are, the system relaxes. That relaxation is stability. The fifth dimensional layer does not collapse when emotion moves. It collapses when identity contracts. As long as identity remains spacious, movement does not threaten alignment. This is why practices eventually fall away. Practices are useful when identity is unstable. They provide structure while coherence is forming. Once coherence stabilizes, structure becomes unnecessary. Presence becomes default. You are not maintaining a state. You are living from one. Ongoing access is not something you earn daily. It is the natural condition of an identity no longer organized around resistance. When life presents contrast, it is processed quickly. When emotion arises, it moves without redefining you. When decisions appear, they are met without urgency. Nothing special is happening, and that is the point. Stability does not mean intensity. It means simplicity. The dramatic highs and lows fade because there is no longer internal fragmentation amplifying experience. What remains is clarity, responsiveness, and a quiet confidence that does not need reinforcement. You do not need to protect this state from the world. The world responds to it. The moment you stop trying to preserve alignment, alignment deepens. Identity stays open. The gateway remains visible. Not because you are watching it, but because you are no longer stepping out of coherence. This is how the fifth dimensional state becomes ordinary. It integrates into work, relationships, movement, and rest. There is no split between spiritual awareness and daily life. Awareness informs life directly. Life reflects awareness accurately. Nothing needs to be added to make this real. Nothing needs to be removed to keep it. Stability is the absence of internal argument. When that argument ends, access remains. This is not an ending. It is a settling. A return to what was always functioning beneath the noise. You are not holding the state. The state is holding you. Subscribe and share this with someone who needs to hear it before their timeline closes.